On the outskirts of Harbin, Manchuria, sit the concrete ruins of a facility once known officially as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. In reality, this complex was the nerve center for a massive, state-sponsored biological warfare program. Surgeon General Shirō Ishii argued that weaponizing pathogens could provide a strategic advantage for a resource-poor Japan, allowing the military to conquer its enemies through science rather than raw materials. This was an industrial-scale endeavor, staffed by thousands of doctors who inverted the purpose of modern medicine, using their expertise to inflict mass death instead of preventing it. To justify this work, the researchers employed a linguistic mechanism of detachment. They referred to their human test subjects simply as Maruta, the Japanese word for logs. These logs were primarily Chinese civilians, including women and children, along with Korean dissidents, Russian captives, and Allied prisoners of war. Once assigned a number inside the Pingfan laboratory, a prisoner's fate was sealed. The facility maintained a 100% fatality rate, with no documented survivors. By systematically stripping these victims of their humanity, the researchers built an intellectual framework that discarded the Hippocratic Oath in favor of military utility. To gather data, doctors performed surgical vivisections on fully conscious subjects. They avoided anesthesia, believing chemical interference would alter physiological results. They also tested the limits of environmental trauma. Preparing for winter conflict with the Soviets, researchers took prisoners into sub-zero temperatures and froze their limbs solid to test recovery techniques. To study physiological limits, victims were sealed inside hypobaric chambers. The air pressure was steadily dropped until the vacuum caused their internal organs to rupture. These acts were documented with clinical detachment. The pursuit of scientific data had divorced itself from human morality. This data moved from the laboratory to the battlefield as the facility began the mass cultivation of plague-infected fleas. Conventional explosives killed bacteria with heat, so Ishii engineered porcelain bombs to shatter in the sky, raining infected fleas over a wide area. Aircraft dropped these payloads over Chinese cities like Ningbo, triggering epidemics that killed up to 500,000 people. The military eventually planned Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night, a plot to use long-range submarines to launch planes and drop plague-infected fleas directly onto Southern California. This biological strike on the American homeland was scheduled for September 1945. It was halted only by Japan's surrender the month prior. In less than a decade, Unit 731 successfully scaled localized medical torture into a functional weapon of mass destruction. Following the war, the Allied powers organized tribunals to hold Axis leaders accountable, most notably the Nuremberg trials in Europe. Nazi physicians were prosecuted and hanged for their lethal experiments. The verdicts resulted in the Nuremberg Code, establishing the foundation of modern medical ethics. In the Pacific, however, the architects of Japan's biological warfare program encountered a different set of consequences. The victorious Allies championed medical ethics in Europe while applying a different standard to Japan. Shirō Ishii and his top researchers were never prosecuted. Instead, they were granted top-secret immunity from all war crimes charges. This pardon was orchestrated by the United States military, operating under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. The decision came down to geopolitical calculus. With the Cold War beginning, the U.S. sought exclusive access to Japan's biological warfare data. Because this data was derived from torture that American scientists could never legally replicate, the findings were absorbed into the U.S. bioweapons program at Fort Detrick. By trading justice for research, the American government laundered the evidence of mass murder to secure its own military advantage. In the aftermath, many Unit 731 doctors reintegrated into society. They secured prominent roles in post-war Japan's medical associations, universities, and hospitals. They lived successful lives, while the suffering of their victims was buried and denied by both governments for decades. The legacy of Unit 731 proves that in the shadow of international conflict, powerful nations decided that weaponized data was more valuable than the human lives taken to produce it.